7:38, approaching 7:39 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, it is the start of the official school vacation of 3 weeks. School closing on Friday. Today, you would see there's not as much traffic around because there is less activity on the road because the children are basically at home. But that presents a challenge as well because parents will have to find ways to keep their children occupied apart from taking them out shopping and so on, and whether or not it involved any holiday camps or other activities, or letting them stay by neighbors or by families, or maybe people they may not know particularly well. There's always a risk attached to that, which is why we've invited Kelly Farlane, who's usually involved with our discussions on a Wednesday when we have our family focus discussions. She's a clinical and organizational psychologist, and she's going to offer us some perspectives and tips. I didn't even know there was something like an organizational psychologist. So do you help people organize things?
Well, no, organizational in terms of the work organization, workplace.
Okay, so not as organizers as in how to pack things and whatever, but organization, how to organize your business in that sense. But let's leave that alone for the moment.
Yes,
let's talk about the clinical psychologist side of things. What sort of advice would you like to give parents, especially at this time of the year when so much is happening and children under the foot all the time now as their children are particularly excited about the holiday period? What sort of advice would you like to give parents at this time?
Well, first of all, for many parents, as much as they may love to be able to have their children under their foot all the time, many parents do have to work. So they wonder, well, okay, where am I going to have my kids? Who is going to supervise my kids while I am at work? Some parents can't take their kids to work, but many can't. So the first, I think, advice that I would give is, of course, as I would expect, be careful who your child is with. What many people don't realize sometimes is that more than 90% of perpetrators of child sexual abuse is somebody that the child knows, an adult that the child knows. So what you might want to avoid is one-to-one adult-to-child supervision. So just your child and this adult together all day, right? Knowing the signs of any type of sexual abuse is important as well. So if your child suddenly starts having these nightmares or bedwetting or reverting to things like thumb sucking and things like that they would have grown
or they're normally very outgoing and talkative and laughable,
right,
and
now
become
they're very
silent
worried,
and they're talking to nobody.
Exactly. They uncomfortable taking off their clothes to bathe, the obvious things like STIs and trauma to the genital areas and so on like that. Be aware of those things. Or if a child says they're not comfortable going by uncle or auntie or Mr. Mrs. so-and-so, respect that. Another thing that I look at too, as we are on that topic, is oftentimes we tell children, go and give so-and-so a hug and a kiss. Go on. And the child doesn't want to. For whatever reason, maybe the child is shy or they just don't feel like they need to hug and kiss anybody this morning. And sometimes we push them, go and kiss your uncle or your dad, whoever, right? Your auntie or whatever. I would like to caution people not to do that because children have to feel like they have rights. Even though you're an adult, if I don't feel comfortable kissing you or touching you or hugging you or with you touching me, that's okay as well. Children could be respectful and greet people without touching if they're not comfortable with it.
And I mean, there are so many areas that we could delve into in relation to that. But are you from your experience, whether professionally or socially or whatever, are you seeing parents being more mindful of these realities, that whether they are predators in our midst, and as you mentioned, 90% of the abuse are people who the child would know? Are you getting a sense that people are more aware of these realities and are responding to them?
I think generally I wouldn't make a general yes or no on that. But I think if we look at the statistics and if we look at the rate and the amount of the incidence of child sexual abuse in Trinidad and Tobago, it is quite alarming. If we look at the stats from the Children's Authority and so on of how many children are abused, and even if you talk to adults in prison and so on, like women in prison, and many of them would tell you their stories started with some sort of sexual abuse. So we have, unfortunately, a great deal of that happening in our culture, and we do wonder why. And then things like what I just mentioned in terms of we're very power distant and respect your elders, and the way that we think children should show respect probably could contribute to that, and we may trust, you know, people among us, and because so I do some lecturing at UWI, and I was talking to these students about what's the word when adults interfere with little children, incest and so
yes,
on, right?
Right?
And I was telling them that, you know, we have a lot of it in our culture, and pedophilia.
Yes.
And they were like, no. And then I reminded them. I said, look at these stats. Look at what has been happening. And while we don't have, you know, how those ABC specials show you all these they call them they label them.
Yes.
We don't label pedophilia necessarily,
Right.
but we do have the child sexual abuse.
Is there an element in our culture that tolerates that type of behavior?
Well, that is a very tricky and touchy subject.
I know.
I want to be very careful.
I mean, we don't have time to go into all of that, but I mean, you have to ask yourself, and maybe time doesn't allow us to go into that. So let me not get you in trouble.
I would bravely say yes,
yeah,
sir, but yeah.
Let me not get you in trouble this hour of the morning, because there's an element. But what would you say to a parent, for example? Let's say as you give the scenario, go and hug up your uncle now, but the child doesn't want to, and because you respect that child's unwillingness to, the uncle gets offended. How do you deal with that as the parent? So you feel like going to interfere with your child or what? The child want to come and hug me up, so on, so on. So how do you as the parent get the uncle to understand the child is just not that kind of expressive kind of person?
Precisely, exactly that. You have to defend and stand up for your children, and you have to be very assertive in that sense, because you have to protect your child more than anybody else's feelings, right? I'm sorry, uncle, that you feel that way. I mean, don't say it like how I just said. So let's say it nicely. But you know, you're sorry that they feel that way.
Stone that
But your priority is making sure your child is comfortable and happy, and you just explain to them very kindly, okay, she's not in a hugging mood today, she doesn't want to hug. And my philosophy is, as a parent, that if my child does not want to hug and touch, I don't force them to, because yes, uncle, I trust you, but if I train my child to just obey and touch adults when they say they want to touch you, then she might do it with somebody else who is not as trustworthy as you. So it's not personal. Don't take it personal. We all have to respect and act in a way to protect this child. If you care about my child, you would care about that philosophy.
What additional words of caution would you give to parents, or a parent or single parent or whoever who is sending their child to spend some time with family, whether in Kumuto or San Fernando or Scarborough or New York or whatever? And maybe it's the first time they're going with, but you know the family, or you know them, or I assume you know them pretty well. What words of advice would you give to those parents as far as advising their children?
So I always say that these conversations about body parts and inappropriate touch and stuff need to start from very early. But I know we're talking about a range of ages. So let's say it hasn't started. Start it. Yeah. That's number one. Have the conversations about inappropriate touch, what your rights are. Don't be forced to do anything. Don't do anything you're not comfortable with doing, especially when it comes to your body. And be open to talking about things, about how they feel about different things in terms of their sexual development and so on. And when you do talk about these things, it would already be awkward enough for the child. They will already have these ideas that maybe mom or dad might feel a little funny, or I feel a little funny. So you want to remain as calm and open and warm about it as possible.
Is that an easy conversation to have? Because, I mean, I'm trying to imagine that you're trying to build the confidence with your child, but talking about touching private parts and explaining things and so on. It comes down to the relationship you have with your child.
It does.
Is it, if for whatever reason for you haven't had that relationship, but you realize this is a situation that you must bring to the attention of your adolescent, female or male or whatever, is it an awkward discussion to start to have for the first time?
For many people it is, because again we still have that element of our culture where we think children, if we if we block their faces, if we hide it
See
from
no
them,
evil, hear no evil,
right? They
yeah.
won't do it. But that's not true. So especially now where we have all this social media and we're so connected to American children are very different from typical what we know our local Caribbean children to be. They are a lot more outgoing and independent and expressive, and so we just have to find a way to get to that and to do it. If it's really, really uncomfortable, one thing we can do is have their doctor on their next visit talk to them about sexual health and development. But it is really important for you to have that avenue with your child, that your child knows that if something happens, they can come to you. It's easier for them to come to you than to say, hey, can I go to the doctor so that I can talk about, something that I'm experiencing or that my friends are doing that I don't know how to do. I want to know more about it. Because if they don't talk to you about it, guess what? They're talking to their friends about it anyway. They're looking at social media, they're looking at TV, and the messages that they're getting, if you're not aware of what those messages are, you don't know what to tell them. Hey, this is nonsense. Don't follow that. This is good. This will keep you safe. This will be unhealthy. We just have to kind of break those.
And because that's those attitudes, those 18th century, 19th century attitudes are now being overtaken, as you said, by social media. It's very important, isn't it, for you as a parent to get in front of that discussion.
Exactly.
Don't wait till they see it on social media. To take in front, as we would say, and explain as best as you can in a very responsible and straightforward manner. And
even so, there will still be things that we miss as parents because all sorts of weird things pop up, right? And new trends and stuff and words that children use that we don't yet know about. Things pop up every day. That's just how it is. So yes, you try to get in front of it as much as you can, but there will still be new things. But the point is to have that door open where mom or dad are real cool. I could talk to them about these things. And
even if you did something wrong.
Even if you did something wrong.
Maybe especially if you did something wrong. Yes. You should be able to be in that space with your child.
Totally.
That they could come to you without that judgmental
exactly.
so and so, that kind of thing.
Or getting in trouble. I don't want to lie with those people.
How far are we away from that? I mean, I'm surprised that you would say that in talking to students at UE, they wanted to deny the reality as far as the abuse and the sexual abuse that goes on.
We don't label ourselves as, hey, we have a lot of pedophiles here. It happens.
Okay, maybe wider society, Ms. McFarlane, who don't want to. But I'm surprised that in an educational institution where you would think people would be more open-minded to realities, they'll understand that these things do exist
and
here,
easily,
and actually flourishing here.
Yeah, and easily after you remind them, hey, look at this. It's like, oh yeah, that's pedophilia. That's what it is.
That taking me to the point I was asking you about whether or not culturally we have accepted that thing. But I wouldn't take you into that discussion this morning. Maybe at another time when we resume our family-focused discussion, that might be appropriate. But because the people, as you mentioned correctly, people working, trying to hold on to jobs maybe, just don't have the time to monitor as closely as they would like, through no fault of their own because of their own circumstances. Not that they're necessarily bad parents or neglectful parents, it is because of their circumstances. And I suppose there's no quick fix to this situation, but are there certain points that you'd like to leave with us this morning? Just to re-emphasize things that, if you were to say these are non-negotiable, you must do this, you must do that, what would those non-negotiables be?
You must have a nice open communication with your children. That's number one. At very least, a very trusted adult in your family or in your circle of friends or doctor or somebody, you must be sure that your child has somebody that they can go to who would give them good, sound advice, even if it's their therapist. All else fails, get them a counselor. Be aware of the behaviors of the adults in their lives. If there's an adult in their life that tends to have very age-inappropriate relationships, they always have friends with kids, or they're overly friendly, they try to be kids' friends, they're buying gifts for them with no birthday or no kind of occasion. Be kind of wary of these things. Look for these signs. Don't bury your head in the sand and think these things don't happen. These things are rampant, right? Pedophilia, incest, taking advantage of children and adolescents, they're rampant. They exist. I mean, it's Christmas, and Christmas is a nice time. We don't want to just make everything all
but we have to face up to realities. I mean,
yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's all happy and nothing wrong with that,
Yeah,
you know.
but
that veneer of joyousness and caroling and parang and whatever, if behind that there is abuse, and we don't deal with that, then we are actually abdicating our responsibilities as adults in that regard. So it's important that you bring that to the table. And I'm sure the intention is not that we want to pour cold water on people's celebrations.
Yes.
But think about people who are being abused.
Yeah.
Because they can't enjoy anything.
That's right.
They can't enjoy whether it's the Christmas or whatever else it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's important,
important.
And I'm glad that we're having this discussion this morning. And also, just as you mentioned, people who are always in the company of children for whatever reason, but also adults who, when they come home by you, talking to the children about things that only adults should be talking about.
Yes, true. What we expose our kids to is very important as well.
A lot of issues on the table, Ms. McFarlane, but it's important that we do give these guidelines because the children are at home. They should be properly supervised. They may not be as effectively supervised as maybe we would all like them to be, but it's important that we be mindful of the realities out there. You wouldn't want your child to be scarred irreparably by an experience which could have been easily avoided by us being more responsible in our role as parents and proper caregivers here in Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks very much for taking the time to join us this morning. We'll take a break and I'll be back in a little while to wrap up the show.